Is the sound coming through okay? Testing 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay, we come to Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 4. Vayahi ka shamyi et ha devarim ha elah yashabti.
That be like after I heard the words, these words?
Yeah. Yeah, when or after.
And it came to pass when I heard these words, or the words of these.
No, these words, we would say.
I sat and cried.
I sat and here we have, of course, Beit, Kaf, Hey, from Beka. So he sits down, he sat, he cried, and
Mourned. He was mourned, but it was very, very.
what's the root of Ba'ef Abilah? Abal, which is what? Where we get whose name from? Abel, which means to
Mourn?
yeah, to cry. Mm-hmm. And I mourned, I cried. How long did he cry or mourn? For days. Days. And
I became. So I began. That's imperfect. Well, I stopped eating.
yeah, how do you do that?
Fasted and meditated.
Fasted and I prayed lifnei.
For the sake of God of heaven.
Yeah, before in the presence of the God of Hashemayim, God of the heavens. Verse 5. Yeah, then I said,
Now, beseeching the Lord,
yeah, oh Yahweh,
God of the heavens,
God of the heavens and great God,
to be feared and to be feared, who keeps covenant. That covenant.
yeah, Shomer, to guard, to watch, to keep. Keeps what?
Covenant.
Yeah, Berith.
And mercy, loyal love.
Yeah, loyalty, love.
To love the benefit. No. To love and for one.
Kel participle. Yeah, to those who love Him, to those who love Him.
Who love.
Everybody see with that term, what's the root? Ahav. To those who love Him. And
For one.
to those who keep His commandments, His judgments, commandments. Good. Verse 6.
I prayed, but it's not really I prayed. Please, I pray
what?
Let it be done, I pray.
Yeah.
Let it be done, I pray.
What do you do with the third word?
For the third word, be attentive. You, there's
Asnika.
be attentive. Let your ear be attentive.
Okay. And your eyes
be open
to what?
to hear.
To hear the prayer of your servant. You have ani and then you have anoki. Or which eye?
Which I pray towards your face or your presence today.
Hayom Yoma.
Today and night.
So what's probably idiomatic expression, day after day after day, all the time? Hayom Yoma Alayla.
Today, day and night.
Yeah, so he's praying all the time. Each day, all night, that idea. Al B'nai Israel.
So is Israel your servant?
So he's standing on guard praying. Praying for who? Yeah, concerning the sons of Israel, your and
confess he's confessing their sins.
The sins of sons of Israel.
Yeah, the sins of the sons of Israel.
yeah, let's talk about that for a few minutes. There's an expression, and in one way it's kind of okay, in many ways it's not okay. I don't know if you use it here, but sometimes a person will say all sin is sin. You ever heard that expression? All sin is sin. Immediately the answer should be, no, it's not. In the law system, all sin wasn't sin. You do this was the penalty. You do that, this was the penalty. You do this, another penalty. There were severities of sin. So, so to speak, if some person, being responsible for ordering the murder of 6 million people, that big sin, so to speak, is that equal to somebody stealing a candy bar out of a store? You'd say both are wrong. Both may bring a penalty, but definitely both actions are not equal. We see this also in the Old Testament, that in the Old Testament there were 3 major categories of doing wrong. And let's talk about this, because this will really kind of affect your Old Testament theology. 3 major categories of doing wrong, wrongdoing before God. And the simple thing is, in your mind, up on the board, paint a little picture. And the first one is here, chata, mentioned right here. It's the most common word for sin in the Old Testament. And it has the idea of missing. But with that, it has the idea of attempting to hit and do. It's used of a person aiming at a target but missing the target, but they were attempting to hit the target, but they didn't. They failed. So if you said, so-and-so is dribbling down the court, takes a shot, misses, kata. Missed the mark, missed the basket. But there was an attempt to try to make the basket. So, it may be a type thing, a person says, well, my word, I all my unsaved life I used to swear. And so now I'm a Christian and I want to deal with swearing, and so I'm trying very hard, even if I get upset, not to swear. Day after day, and the person's, with God's help, trying, but maybe the person slips. But there's been the attempt. And even when they slip, they confess and try to go back, dealing with the habit, putting that behind them. That's the idea. And so just in your, under kata, just paint a target and missing the target. But the attempt was to hit it. Something positive. Positive in the attempt. Second word, pasha. Pei, sheen, ayin. Pasha. Pasha is to rebel, to transgress. I don't know about you, but, as a kid, read the Bible, you'd hear sin, you'd hear iniquity, you'd hear transgress. Didn't know really what they all meant, but just kind of figured they're all kind of meaning the same thing. But they're not. I mean, one way they are, they're all forms of sin, but they're different categories. Big different categories. The second target, paint the target, but put a fist in front of it. Person who's a rebel basically says, I'm not going to do it.
But recognizes what they should do.
But has some recognition of what is expected. Yep.
That's why it's still sin.
Yeah. So, we've probably all been there. You look up at heaven and you wave your fist and you say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. That's rebellion. That's being in revolt against what God has established. Third big category, iniquity. Avon. Avon. And with avon, it is a big X through the right target and then starting to paint your own target. To God, what you have said is not right, and I'm going to live life this other way or my way. Classic example is a cult leader that knows something about Christianity. And they basically tell their followers, that way is not right, my way is the right way, do this.
That's what happened when you're talking about as far as the generational sin in Israel, that there was a generation of children who rebelled against, a good example, their parents, but then they, becoming parents, had children that did not rebel against them, but were encouraged to seek themselves.
Yep. And sometimes you'll have passages where a person will basically say the issue in their life before God in confession has been transgression. They've been in rebellion and they confess that and they try to move back. But, any of you guys hockey fans? What's a hat trick? 3 goals in one night. What I call the hat trick passages of sin in the Old Testament. And there are several where David, with the Bathsheba issue in Psalm 51, says, I have chatad, I have pasha, I have avon. So he sees whatever he did as in violation of all 3 of these major categories of doing wrong before God. But do your own study. It's phenomenal what you'll come away with. Do your own study, just word study, on each of those terms and go passage after passage after passage after passage. And whoa, what you'll come away with is absolutely phenomenal in understanding, but also just impacting of, in the Old Testament time period, and of course these same terms you'll find equivalents for in the New Testament. So to speak, the categories are there, and you have a whole psalm. I'm trying to remember which one it is, but you have a whole psalm in the book of Psalms that's just on dealing with iniquity. And you have many passages in the Old Testament where those 3 with serious sins are brought together. And apparently, as you start thinking about that, well, there was an attempt to do right, but then maybe that attempt started to cool, and then a person gets around to self-justification, so all of a sudden they've talked themselves into a revolt or a rebellion, and then they start to influence others by their lifestyle or what they say, and all of a sudden other people start thinking and acting and doing that. So tremendous study, and dig into it. But here,
How do you spell the Avon?
Avon, I involve Newen. Avon. Looks like in some transliterations Avon, so don't go after the Avon. Simple that you're selling, and so on, iniquity.
Well, sometimes it is.
Oh, so okay, let's see here. We got that. We were down to where? Verse 7. Verse 6? Okay. Praying for you, servants. Yeah.
Israel, the third line.
Yeah.
Who? Share. I'm sorry. Third line down.
The confession goes on concerning who?
Sons of Israel.
Sins of the sons of Israel who
have sinned, they have sinned.
Lock.
Against.
Yeah.
You. Second person. Well, no.
Va'ani.
And I, not me.
Va. Once in a while can mean what? Vav. Based on context. Even.
And also. So even
And what?
even I in my father's house, and
We did what?
we sinned.
We sinned. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, he says, hey, there's a problem between us and God. He prays for his people, but in the final analysis, he says, we've been part of the problem. You know, we have done these things, even down to our own family, whatever the issues were. Okay, let's go on with 7. Kavol. Kavanu. Lak. Below. Chait. Veit. Lamed.
That's the verb.
Wicked.
We have pledged wickedly or corruptly.
Yeah, to
Or in regard to
corrupt.
we have not kept. No, we have kept. Eight commandments. Commandments.
We have done what?
We have pledged corruptly, or we have done.
Usually when you have two forms of the word, verbal form next to each other, what normally happens?
Emphasize.
Yeah, it's this intensification often that will go on. Do we do this in English? Will we use a term?
Run.
Yeah, it's almost that idea. Rather than just saying run in one way once, you'll say it two ways, almost tied together. But it's a way to, put the stress there. So what has happened here? We've done what?
Done corruptly.
So you have cal infinitive.
Yeah, that's been
Cal-perfect, first common plural.
We, first common plural, we have corrupted ourselves against you.
Mm-hmm. Then what?
It's reflective. And then the first common plural, we have not, and we have not kept.
We've not kept what? The command, statutes, and the laws. Who did you give them to? Moses. Who's he? Your servant. Good. Verse 8.
Remember, I pray.
Devar can also mean word, instruction, teaching.
You commanded. Remember the word you commanded.
Okay.
Your servant. Okay. I pray, remember the word which you commanded your servant Moses to say or says to
Atem.
you. Act.
In the context of Tem refers to who?
Oh, God. The people, right? No, boy, well,
What is it?
it has to be the people.
Okay.
Because that's kind of the way they act.
The Tem ending. Okay. Then what? Ma'al. What's the root ma'al mean?
Is that faithless?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a person who isn't carrying through with what they should as trespassed.
Right? It's not you like second singular.
Is it singular or plural?
Plural.
Tim Alu.
You. But who is actually a substitute? Can be the person.
Singular?
Singular second person.
So who's it referred to?
People.
No, I'm going to to Moses. Right? I mean, he talked to Moses, right? The commandments he gave it to Moses, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will scatter that. No.
So as he talks to Moses, Moses is, of course, the leader, the point person. So sometimes God can talk to him in the singular, but it applies to the people because it's a kind of corporately that idea. If you do that, then what?
Then I will scatter you from the nation.
Afis.
Scatter.
Mm-hmm. I will spread you among the peoples, the nations. Verse 9. From Shuv. Yeah. And you keep my commands and do them. What's Eem? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kind of hard
going to say that one, it's almost like if it were to be.
Okay, let's start 9 over.
And if you return to me,
Mm-hmm.
and he, what's the commandments and do them, and here we have the human.
Probably then.
Then it will be.
Yeah, then it will be what?
Forgiven you or taken away from you. Is he still talking about the sin at that point? That he's going to take away if they begin to do the commandment, then they're going to.
Yeah, what's the root of our next term? Eudakatem. Nifel, participle from noon, dalet, hate, means to banish, to exile. The ones who what?
The ones who do them.
One's being banished
To the end of the two.
Kof, Saudi, Hay means the
Extreme part of heaven.
yeah.
To the end of heaven.
To the ends of the heavens.
From there, the Sham.
I will
Gather.
yeah, I will gather Kof, Bait, final Saudi.
And imperfect will bring both.
Will bring Im.
Them.
Will bring them El
Into
to the place Hamakom.
which
Here we have our Bakar again,
I choose.
which I chose
To establish Shakim. Well, I could establish Shamim, my name, there, Sham.
verse 10.
Why does this seem harder?
Well, yeah. I mean, some will flow, but when you get into the reasoning of the conversations, but you're stretching. That's the important thing. Hang in there. Hang in there. Verse 10.
Envies,
Haim. And they
your sons,
and your people who you Aditha. Kel perfect to a mouse. Our idea of redeem. Yeah. And by your what type of hand? Strong hands. Next one you've already had tonight in the short story. O Lord,
I pray.
yeah, let it be
Here.
Your ear.
We've had this before.
Attentive, listening.
Now, what, after our discussion of Dorsey, what have you heard before in the text? There's a repetition going on. Haven't they been talking about the ears and the eyes? Attentive to, even down to the same phraseology? Okay. Not to say there is something, but remember, repetition's an indicator, so on your own you can go back and start to see, do we have some parallel pattern going on here? Because I'm hearing the same phraseology over and over. So start 11 over.
Now, O Lord, I pray, be attentive, and let your ear be attentive.
Prayer of your servant and
Servant into prayer.
hate, pay, final study
Is that prayer?
means to enjoy. Enjoy. But what do we have here? Hifel, imperative. Yeah, the ones we're pleased to do what? To fear. Let's talk about that for a moment. What is, since it is the beginning of wisdom, since it is extremely important Old Testament theology, what is the fear of the Lord? As a little kid, I can remember our neighbor had this horrible dog that I feared, to the point where whenever you had to go by their house, you tried some other path, some other way, so you didn't have to deal with this horrible dog, which I greatly feared. Because he wouldn't bark, he'd just sneak up on you and tear into you. Not that kind of fear, but for some, that's their fear of Yahweh.
Right. I think that everyone knows the Scripture says perfect love casts out all fear, so we want to get to a place where we respect our love. And so it's a fear, but because of respect, but and from respect we learn to love.
Okay, so it's this overwhelming, gigantic respect of God, as one person has said, that their love and respect of God is so great that they will go to any extent not to let Him down. Not to let Him down.
Like a suicide bomber.
Just.
That's what they feel like.
Oh yeah. Yeah, not to let. That relationship is that strong.
No, but to obey.
It's not
a fear of comfort. I would think it is more in the context of you understand the ultimate.
what could happen if you don't.
Right.
Right. But is the motivation simply,
To avoid.
I'm going to get my fingers hammered if I do whatever? I mean, is that the motivation?
Well, at least you believe
You know
what
those.
God is doing in your life, and you know His law. So at least
Mm-hmm.
you're not rebellious.
Mm-hmm.
What word was that?
think that in consideration of God believing that He has a personality that we were created to become friends, and so that leads to friendship, respect, and then, like what Greg was saying, loyalty. The same loyal love He has for us, and that He definitely showed Israel in the Old Testament. Grace, grace, grace.
So what I'm hinting at is a tremendous word study would be on that phrase, fear of Yahweh. Tremendous one. And to work through it. A good source, you may have it already in your library, but TWOT, Theological Wordbook of the Old Testament, very, very good. Many evangelical scholars. Fellow who wrote my thesis for, Bruce Walkie, was one of the editors. R. Laird Harris, a Lutheran evangelical scholar I had doctoral classes with. Both, well, he's with the Lord, and then who just passed away was Gleason Archer, professor emeritus at Trinity Seminary, and but a lot of good articles in there. It's one of those sources where just constantly use it. There's a ton of work that's been done for you to build upon there, but it's called Theological Word Book of the Old Testament. It's a 2-volume set, 2 brown volumes, and it will deal with most words that have theological importance, impact in the Old Testament. Okay, what are we doing on 11 here? Let's go again on it. Verse 11?
And now, Lord, be attentive, I pray, and let your ear be attentive. I pray that your ear be attentive to prayer of the servant.
And to the prayer of your servants. The ones who, Dan?
Having pleasure in?
Yeah.
In perfect.
So how do you translate it? Not to fear, no.
You're having pleasure in perfect.
Mm-hmm. To do what? To fear your name and Likatzlika means to be successful.
Your servant, Ayom, today, its first common plural, and we give. You can't just say and give. And give them or show them mercy because
Lifnei Ha'ish.
Before the man, before this man.
And who's that?
him.
The king, right?
No, that's the guy who's perfect. That's what I mean.
So who does this man refer to?
Refers to Nehemiah.
He's praying. Moses? Yeah, he's a big friend.
It's kind of a strange one, isn't it?
He's not the king.
No, he's not the third person.
Well, he has told you what at the opening. Where is he? He's in the palace of the, Shushan, so that means I'm in the palace of the king. Hasn't told you much about himself yet, but that's at least one fact. These issues of sin have come up, the nation, him, his family, etc., etc. He prays on their behalf. He prays for himself. He starts to lay some things out of what they didn't do. And then why is Moses referred to?
The word was given to him to obey to the king.
That's to the king, because what's the next statement say?
I am the cupbearer to the king.
So again, I think it heightens the interest, because any person's mind, even listening, would say, well, who's he talking about? All of a sudden, hey, I got this mega position with the king here in the palace. We'll talk about that. Well, no, let's talk about it right now. Cupbearer in today's world, he would have been in the United States part of the Secret Service. Why?
Protect the king.
How? Anything that would go on to the royal family, especially the king and the queen, he would have to sample first. And then they'd wait. If he dies, if he gets sick, they don't eat the stuff. Now, there were other things the cupbearer did, but that was the main one. I mean, however he got to that position, trust was a major issue. This guy was trusted. So somehow he's got this phenomenal track record that as a as an alien group, as a foreign group within the kingdom. So it's almost the Mordecai kind of a thing, to where even though at times the Jews are having tough times, they still had the right to progress in government and positions, etc., etc. So he's not, so to speak, just, insignificant person out there that happens to be a part of this group that was in exile. He's got a position where he is in on a tremendous amount of conversations with Persian government. In the book of Esther, what's it tell us? How big was the Persian Empire? Someone read Esther 1:1. What does that say? Of course, you've all heard the bad news. A certain Hollywood rock star wants to change her name. Madonna wants to change her name to Esther. That's what everybody's asking, especially the Jewish community. Because she's starting to study the Kabbalah, mystic Judaism. And so what is the Jewish name for Esther? It's in the book of Esther, Hadassah. So, in Israel, the main gigantic national hospital is West Jerusalem, Hadassah Hospital. That was her Hebrew name. Her Persian name was Esther. Anyways, what does Esther 1, I think it's verse 1 say? How big? Okay, how many provinces?
120.
Yeah, 127. 127 provinces stretched from India to Ethiopia. Gigantic. They created also the first real successful postal system. And, but you figure, what we're talking here, Jerusalem, that province of the Jews was only one of, there were 126 more, so to speak. Massive. Absolutely massive. And what happens to the Persian Empire? Who does the Persians in? Alexander the Great. And the big battles up there between some of these kings and the Greeks, both naval and military or army campaigns, etc., but massive loss of life. And you think, I mean, back in that time, how far apart Greece, Athens was, and Susa. I mean, and still to have personalities where they wanted more. It just kind of boggles the mind. And these were, so to speak, these were not neighbors or close neighbors. I mean, these were, and then to move thousands and thousands of troops through rugged mountains to fight battles on the edge of nowhere. I mean, just unbelievable. But that's what you have. I was cupbearer to the king. We will take up, at least on that part, tomorrow night with chapter 2, which starts to smooth out. Nehemiah will go on his famous night ride. And we'll get some maps out. We'll take a look at Jerusalem at that time, and then see what he saw. And then it starts to build up to some major issues of now what do we do? It's just about 9 o'clock. Why don't we take about 8 minutes? We'll come back. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Oh. Yeah, let's see. Our brother reminded us we did not pray tonight, and it's not too late. Are there items to pray for? My youngest daughter is in Tennessee and expecting a baby any second. I drove my wife down there on Friday, and Saturday she spent the whole afternoon in labor, and then it stopped, and that's happened 4 or 5 times. So it's supposed to be on the 15th of July, but it looks like it may be earlier. But appreciate prayer for her, and that'll be grandchild Marissa. That will be grandchild number 4. Request you have. Thank the Lord for safety of bringing the group back from Holy Land, and tremendous time of study and interaction there and fellowship. Pray for our sister. We will find it. It may be tomorrow, but we will find it. Pray for our search concerning a diamond. Search committee. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for our time in your word. We just ask that you'll continue to give us understanding, insight, and as we go over some issues, that it would be a good application also for our walk before you. Father, we ask that items just mentioned, individuals, that you would work in a tremendous way. Father, just help us as we serve you this summer in Jesus' name. Amen. Dorsey, let's spend about 10 minutes on a few pages. And what we're going to do this week is simply look at examples. His whole thesis, so to speak, is set out pages 15 to 44 of the importance of structuralism, ancient Near East, i.e. here in the Old Testament. And he'll lay out a few other points, and then simply the rest of the book he's going to take you through the entire Old Testament and show you where structure is very obvious. Page 47, Book of the Law, historical prologue. He's talking concerning Genesis 1:1 through Exodus 19, verse 2. He says the Old Testament comprises a number of books, 39 in our modern Bibles, or 22 by early Jewish reckoning. As previously noted, second paragraph, some books in the English Old Testament were not originally independent compositions, but were segments of larger books. At some stage in their manuscript history, these originally longer books were split into two or more parts to accommodate the limited length of scrolls. The Book of Chronicles, for example, was too long to fit on a single scroll, and so was split for scribal convenience into two halves. The division eventually became fixed, and today these two halves are reckoned as two separate books in modern versions of the Bible, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, although all agree that these two books were actually two halves of one original book. Dropping down, Genesis was not written as an independent composition, but was the first section of a larger book called in ancient sources the Law, or the Book of the Law of Moses, or the Book of Moses, or the Torah, or the Pentateuch. Put there in your margin Tanakh. T-A-N-A-K-H, and that's what Jews call it, the Tanakh, for the entire, just not the Pentateuch, the New Testament, the three divisions, Law, Prophets, Writings, Tanakh. Some argue that it also included Joshua, in other words, not a Pentateuch, but a Hexateuch, 6 books. Others extend the work through Samuel, an Octateuch, or through Kings, etc. But he'll present a pretty good case that the story started in Genesis basically needs to be understood in view through Joshua, and the structure will show that also. The Book of the Law focuses on the great treaty that Yahweh made with Israel at Mount Sinai. Page 48, 3 lines down. First, a word about the function of this historical introduction. The central unit of the Book of the Law, the center of it, Exodus 19:3 to Numbers 10:10, presents the treaty, the covenant, Berith, that Yahweh made with Israel at Sinai. This treaty is similar in many respects to secular vassal suzerain treaties of the ancient Near East. And some examples of that then occur. We'll deal more with that topic when we get to his discussion of Deuteronomy. Second column, halfway down, the internal organization of Genesis 1 through 11 is conspicuously marked by the reoccurring formula of the Toledot. These are the generations of. And it segments the book into several different units. Top page 49, 3 lines down, left-hand column. Several structuring patterns are discernible, and talks about, of course, using days, using numbers of words, using repetitious phrases, etc., etc. Page 50, 6.1, 6.2, very interesting. The first account Notice creation of man, his happy relationship with the earth and his home in the garden, where he was freely growing food and had access to the tree of life. B, creation of woman, her happy relationship with man. C, serpent in conversation with woman tempts her. D, the center, the sin and God's uncovering of it. C prime, punishment of the serpent, it spoiled the relationship with woman. B prime, punishment of woman, her spoiled relationship with man. A prime, punishment of man, his spoiled relationship with the earth and the expulsion from his home in the garden. He will now have to toil to secure food and will no longer have access to the tree of life. But then notice what's right next door. Cain's sin, Genesis 4, 1-16. Cain's happy beginning, birth of Cain and Abel. Cain's job of working the soil. B, Cain's resentment of God's rejection of his offering. C, God's kind response, tries to reason with him. D, the center, Cain's sin and God's uncovering of it. A prime, Cain's sad ending. He is now cursed from the soil, banished from living with his family. B prime, Cain's resentment of God's punishment. C prime, God's kind response provides for Cain's protection. And so he'll bring out in Genesis many of the small and very large forms of structure, and so on. Page 52, a famous one. We looked at it in a simple way with the handout that I had couple weeks ago concerning the flood. And notice 6.4. Don't let it run into 6.5 there, but 6.4, it starts out with a genealogical note. Notice A prime at the bottom there, genealogical note. And it even gets down to terminology that is used. And then, of course, building to the center there with G, climax, all life on land dies, only no one knows with him are spared, etc., etc. Page 55, 6.9, arrangement, main units of Genesis 1 through 11. I think as you read through it, you find it fascinating to how it is all interwoven. And then 6.10, arrangement of the 14 main units of Genesis 1 through 11. And notice, let's track this. Section 1, Genesis 1:1, 6:8, creation story, first beginning, divine blessing. B, sin of Adam, his nakedness, seen, covering nakedness, the curse. C, younger righteous son Abel, murdered, no descendants. D, descendants of sinful son Cain. E, descendants of chosen son Seth. F, divine judgment on unlawful unions. G, brief introduction of Noah. Second section, 6:9, 11:26, A prime, flood story, reversal of creation, new beginning, divine blessing. B prime, sin of Ham, nakedness, seen, covering, nakedness, curse is an issue. C prime, descendants of younger righteous son Japheth. D prime, descendants of sinful son Ham. E prime, descendants of chosen son Shem. F prime, divine judgment on human attempt to stay together. G prime, brief introduction of Abram, through whom God will bless humankind. And so going on, not haphazard at all. 7, take a look on your own.
Would a hearer be able to keep track of the 6 chapters worth of reading there before you start over?
Well, I think of how, probably the easiest thing is think of how when a person views a movie they've never seen, I mean, you go in and you say to yourself, well, I don't know what I'm going to see, you know. And as the thing begins, if it's well done, it starts fitting together. I mean, somebody will say something over here that seems kind of weird, odd, or unusual. Hour later in the film, something comes up to where you know why that was said. So in your mind, you're doing these little connections. You're expecting something. And when something is different, unusual, you really take note of it because there are norms of, how things are presented. And, but, yeah, I mean, would a person get them all? Maybe not. Would they get some of them? Definitely. Many of them, perhaps. Depends on, how versed they are. But,
I wonder if the speaker would ever, when you're done with the session, go back and reveal that to the people he was speaking to, maybe.
it may have. Yeah, I mean, just like however you would teach or preach, you may do your summary different from others. Some person may go back and review all main points. Some person, may not do that and simply deal with application. And so, there's...
If you look at G and G prime, that they're both the same in the sense that through whom God will bless mankind. And so, like you were saying, each person is going to hear the story, process, content of the story, mull it around, but everyone's going to get the point that of G and G prime, that whether it's Noah or Abraham,
Okay.
bless mankind, no matter how much information.
Take a look at page 60. This is a phenomenal piece. 6.15, Symmetry of the Joseph Story. And I'm not going to read it all, but simply look at what is underlined and then look down to the counterpart. Joseph's dream that brothers will bow down. A prime, Joseph's brothers bow down before him. Brothers hate Joseph to the point where they sell him and think that he's probably never coming back. A prime, fear that he will hate them. They cannot speak kindly to him. Not here a comparison but a contrast. He speaks kindly to them. Joseph's age is mentioned. Joseph's final age in death is given. So I mean, this is heavy duty. I mean, this is it's divinely inspired. On the human side, it is very, very solidly worked out, not thrown together. What scholars used to say about the Pentateuch and on and on and on. They would say Mosaic, small instead of capital M. About Radai and all that, but this is massive. One
words are
if you went in the Hebrew text,
the same in Hebrew.
Yeah, same in Hebrew text. So to speak, the same positions and cadence, but then again, if you went to Hebrew text, a form of the same word. Even grievous mourning in Hebron, 37, or I should say B prime, grievous mourning near Hebron.
Is there kind of a spiritual lesson in, see if you take B and B prime, Joseph's enslavement to Egyptians, and then Joseph's enslavement of Egyptians? Did you, without having to really think this through, must be a lesson in.
Yeah, I mean, to see, did he do things? I get one person would say, well, did he do things? Did he spend so much time there that he started acting like them? Was it a sinful thing, or was it? How does that fit in? One more, page 67. Symmetric arrangement of the entire Exodus account. Exodus 1:1 to 13:16. And a lot going on here in contrast. Even down to specific words again being used. Yeah, page 67, 626. Which brings us quickly to an article. And it's a heavy article, so don't let it scare you off, because we're only going to point out 4 or 5 things, a few minutes, and be done with it. But it's something to refer to, and it is quoted by Dorsey. So there'll be several pages coming around here for a minute. Just kind of bear with us in one of each. Those on video, this is the article by, the last name is Bar Efrat, an Israeli author.
What's the date of this article?
Oh, I think it's in your check. I think it's in your syllabus. Should be there. Was someone able to check what the date was?
I think it was
1980? Can you maybe write that in for future reference there with the... It's out of Vetus Testamentum, which is kind of a heavy-duty Old Testament journal. In recent years, an increasing number of studies have been published devoted to the investigation of the literary features of biblical narratives. That statement predates this book by, about 16 years? And so this book has gathered up a lot of those ideas and articles and has drawn the loose ends together, so to speak. Top page 155. Its aim is to bring to light their artistic and rhetorical characteristics, their inner organization, their stylistic and structural features. Structuralism, dropping down, is itself only one manifestation of the current attempt to look at things as they are, to investigate the arrangement of constituent parts rather than to inquire how they originated, how they developed. It appears, however, that there is some lack of clarity with regard to the method of analyzing structure. When examining specimens of structural analysis of biblical narratives, one sometimes senses a lack of awareness of the exact nature of the structural elements employed. Dropping down, structure can be defined as the network of relations among the parts of an object or unit. Page 156. In the field of biblical narrative, first paragraph particularly, it seems to be impossible to define the boundaries of the literary unit rigidly. In the Bible, narratives which are more or less complete in themselves link up with one another so as to create larger literary units. In other words, narratives which on the one hand can be considered as self-contained units may be regarded on the other hand as parts of larger wholes. Those larger units, in their turn, become components of whole biblical books, those books again being incorporated into comprehensive literary works. Structure can be discerned and may be legitimately be studied in small sections as well as comprehensive units. Well, we're talking basic hermeneutics. The fact that when you go to a passage, you don't want to be myopic to where you forget what's come before, what's come after. You take it out, you analyze it, but you see it as a tree and you never see the forest. Picture, initially for our study, the forest is the individual book. Now we know there's larger, but the forest is at least the individual book. Doing the best job you can there, but then again, making sure you're seeing the forest of that book and seeing where it fits into the overall argument and structure of that book. Some examples there you can read on your own of Job and Ruth. Page 150, well, take a look at top page 157, and he gives a little overview of the larger structure, parallel structure of what's going on in Ruth down to the two important dialogues of Boaz and Ruth, end of chapter 2 into chapter 3. He says, elements of structure. It is appropriate now to consider the various elements upon which structural analysis may be based. And he says it can be on the verbal level, on the level of narrative technique, the level of narrative world, the level of conceptual content. And he'll spend time on some of these things you've already covered in Dorsey. Dorsey is brought out, so we're not going to rehash those. Go to top page 159. The birth of the story of Samuel's birth, 1 Samuel chapter 1 and 2, is composed mainly of three scenes. The first and largest scene takes place at the house of God in Shiloh, and it shows Hannah before the birth of her son. The second scene takes place at Elkanah's home in Ramathaim, and it shows Hannah after the birth of Samuel. The third scene takes place again, house of God in Shiloh. It shows Hannah presenting her son at a sanctuary. Well, there's that going on. That's definitely there, but there's then other things going on, such as the contrast of Hannah and her son and Eli and his sons. So heavy-duty contrast of what to do and what not to do, how to be a godly parent at that time and how not to be a godly parent, how to take responsibility and how not. And then there's, of course, larger things in the context that also helps in the understanding of what is being stressed and presented. Page 160, first paragraph, the molding of time and narrative pertains not only to its rate of progress, but also to its order. The author can begin his story at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. He can introduce flashbacks, anticipations, and biblical narrative events are arranged as a rule in successive order, and time flows in one direction. However, in a number of cases, flashbacks can be found. This is used often with stories, with books, with movies, to where it opens up, things go on for 5-10 minutes, and all of a sudden you see that was something that happened 40 years ago. And then all of a sudden it moves you to today. Or vice versa. And so, and then you get some accounts, you've probably seen some of these where you can't figure which is the reality? Is one like a dream? And then it gets all the way down right to the end, and the author really has you because you're struggling in your mind. What's real? And all of a sudden, there may be a little indication that the one was the reality and the other one was the flashback or the dream. Page 161, halfway down, the analysis of structure on this level is based on the narrative content as created by the language techniques. The two chief components are characters and events. Many examples here. I've circled some things you can take a look at. Notice there, page 163 with Esther. Most narratives of the Bible have single plots, but some have complex ones. For instance, in the book of Esther, the main plot deals with Haman's desire to exterminate all the Jews in the empire and with the steps taken by Mordecai and Esther to counteract Haman's intention. But besides this main point, a secondary independent plot can be detected. The second plot is concerned with the conspiracy of two of the chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, who planned to murder the king. They are discovered by Mordecai, who much later is rewarded for his saving of the king's life. The secondary plot underlines and reinforces the primary one. Both culminate in Mordecai's victory over Haman. Top page 164, Genesis. A common plot structure can be found also in the three narratives in Genesis telling of a patriarch who begs his wife to pass herself off as his sister in order to save him from being killed by the ruler of a foreign country. The ruler, when the truth is revealed to him, reprimands the patriarch, but does not harm him. Eventually, the patriarch acquires great wealth in the foreign country. Page 166, a great one. I've done some work on this one. It's kind of heavy duty. There's a lot that fits, and then there are some kind of gaps which may be for stress, emphasis, etc. A most conspicuous example of reversal in the direction of the plot development is to be found in the narrative dealing with Jacob's return from his 20 years of service with Laban. Remember, the last thing Jacob understands from his mother is Esau says he's going to kill you. 20 years has not dulled his memory of that fact. The story stresses in various ways that Jacob is very much afraid at the prospect of meeting his brother Esau, whom he had infuriated many years earlier by cheating him out of the blessing due to him as firstborn. Now, upon hearing that Esau has set out toward him with 400 men, Jacob is panic-stricken. He takes several measures to decrease the impact of the impending blow and to abate Esau's anger. He divides all his belongings, all his family, into two camps. He sends many herds, one after another, as presents to Esau, and he offers fervent prayer to God. On the last night before the fateful encounter, Jacob fights with a mysterious man, who in a sense may be taken to stand for Esau. Of course, this is Jewish mindset. And compels him to give him his blessing. In the morning, he approaches his brother with the greatest apprehension manifested by his bowing down to the ground 7 times. Now Esau runs to meet him, but contrary to expectations, Esau embraces and kisses his brother. There is no longer any rancor in Esau's heart, and the brothers are reconciled. It almost gets humorous, because he hears he's coming with 400 men, so what does Jacob do? He sends the wives and the children and the gifts ahead, and he's kind of in the back. Women and children first, right? And so if anybody's going to die, he's got a way out. Jacob, the guy that has plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and if they fail, plan E, plan F, and so on. And it fits even down to what happens in the structure. Page 168, the Noah account, big stress on the form there, 7 days, 40 days, 150 days, 40 days, 7 days. etc., etc. Page 172, a couple words in conclusion. In conclusion, a few remarks must be made about the utility of structural analysis. Since structure is an indispensable aspect of narrative, it goes without saying that its investigation will provide us with a fuller and richer understanding of the narratives. In particular, our sense of their literary and artistic qualities will be greatly enhanced. But structural analysis has value not only for our own sake. Structural arguments can be, and in fact have been, used to prove the unity of the given narrative or to determine the boundaries of a literary unit. Put a big exclamation point. That's not coming from an evangelical believer. It's coming from a Jewish scholar who has seen enough by way of structure and integrity of the text to say, hey, all this long-term liberal contention that it was just kind of a mishmash, collage of whatever with no discernible structure from multiple authors, who knows what went on, all the evidence is going the other way. And it's a great statement. Okay, turn in your Bible to Judges 14. I want you to work for 6 minutes on the first 4 verses. Judges 14, verses 1 through 4. Shimshon. You read? Yeah. Now Samson, Shimshon is Samson. Now Samson went down. Yeah. You have Timnah with a what? Directive hey, comments hey on the end. It's like Timnah word towards Timnah or to Timnah. And yeah, he saw Isha, a woman. Yeah, in Timnah. From the daughters of the Philistines. Manoth, Philistine. Then, from Allah, he went up. And the next verb is an initial nun that is not there. Nun, Gimel, Dalet, means to declare. And he went up and declared to his father and to his mother and said, a woman from Ra and said, I saw a woman. Why do you think Isha is first? Remember our article 2 weeks ago on fronting? Way of emphasizing? Yeah. And said, I saw a woman in Timnah from the daughters of the Philistines. This really gives you inside look of that home. He's basically bossing his parents around saying, go get her for me. And you get from Lakak, you take her, it's the form of the direct object marker with the feminine ending, and you take her, you get her for me, La Isha, yeah, for a wife, that idea. Verse 3 tells you something about them. His father and his mother said to him, Ha'ain.
Your brethren, Habib,
Yeah, this is a form of the interrogative, hey. Are there not,
someone among your own brethren,
among the daughters of your brothers, and in all,
your people, your
no, my people, a woman
or you,
that you could, what do you do with Holek? Halak?
that you could,
How would that fit?
could live with, or
Yeah, because after that comes what? To take,
to
understood as a wife. So what's going on here? They're saying, hey, that's not a good choice. Isn't there one of our daughters of Israel, that's the bottom line, that you could take for a wife? In other words, it's almost the idea that you have to go after a woman of the Philistines? Then what?
this has been said by your live, Samson, to his parents.
Yeah, to his father. Again, the direct object marker with the feminine ending. Her.
Her, give for me, for
Give her to me. I would like.
It is from what? Yashar, which can be right. Right in my eyes. Verse 4 in closing.
He said to his father and mother, no, I know that
Not I.
you know.
Now, his father and his mother, they did not know that
In her way.
from Yahweh,
that my from Yahweh, it was God's will for this. She was from the Lord.
No.
He
He draws from the gifts.
that it was. This one verse, verse 4, has caused great debates. Great debates. Is God,
Free will.
is it saying God is telling him, go marry this pagan from the land, which the law had already said not to accomplish God's will? Or is the verse saying that his parents didn't know his thinking, that he was trying to find a way to get the Philistines? He came up with this plan, not to say it was right, but that's kind of the bottom line of why apparently he's trying to do this. It's just not, wow, hey, I want to marry her, we're going to have a great family, live happily ever after. It's I want to marry her so I can get this inside angle on the enemy. So it's an interesting verse theologically. We'll pick up at that point next week. next meeting, I should say.
Personal life.
We have weekly classes at our school.